player housing in World of Warcraft, and you guys know my take on this. I'm going to tell you it again, but I think it's coming in the next expansion in a certain way.
Is something some players have wanted as far back as 2004 when the game launched. I mean, I was looking at some old posts here, and there's a whole bunch of Blizzard replies being like, we can't do housing. It's a huge feature. A lot of dedicated time needed, and that was December of 2004.
December of 2004. Wow, they've been talking about this for a while.
20 years later, we still wouldn't have it. I mean, games like Star Wars Galaxies had it back then. Games like Final Fantasy have it now, right? So what's the deal with player housing? What's the deal? I figured we'd just talk about player housing today. You know, the pros, the cons, garrisons, and have a big discussion because
garrisons were the saddest attempt at player housing ever. They honestly broke the game.
I have always wanted player housing, and so I just kind of want to talk about what I want from it, what I don't really want from it, and just to get everybody's opinion on that. So the first thing I think I want to talk about is garrisons, because that's as close to player housing as we've gotten. And a lot of times when people bring up player housing, they bring up garrisons, right? People go, oh, I just really want player housing. And they're like, we tried that. We tried garrisons, right? It didn't work out. But garrisons
were essentially like they were like character hub cities. Garrisons were too much. They had crossed the line between what is a player housing is really just an aesthetic thing. To me, at least, that's what I think people want, is they just want this cool thing that they can create their own aesthetic in, maybe hang up some achievements on the walls, move the furniture around, do whatever they want, unlock stuff the same way we unlock transmog maybe for their little player house. But garrisons, they basically said you don't even have to go to your cities anymore. You don't have to interact with society. You could just sit in your garrison. Garrisons were like they were like COVID, man. People just went into fucking lockdown in their garrison and just used that shit and didn't go anywhere anymore. And that was the problem with them. They were just way too much. They went beyond player housing.
Were bad. They were not good. They were a very poorly implemented version of player housing.
Yeah.
They were kind of the primary focus almost.
They also had no customization whatsoever. Like when they first came out, everyone thought, oh, we're going to get to make these look a certain way. No, you just clicked on a plot of land and then picked a pre-made building.
Expansion? They're like, get your garrison, right? And it seemed like you were going to be able to put it wherever you wanted, but it became clear as the game launched that you only had one choice, and it was either Horde place or Alliance place.
Yeah.
So I guess technically two, but one depending. And then it was just very uninspired, very bland, right? You know how if you have a player house in some other game, you're like, oh, look at the way I decorated it. Look at the way I had this. I've
the main thing people like about player housing
stuff over here, right? In Garrison, it was like, oh, what's your Garrison look like? Oh, wow, it looks like mine. You changed that one thing there. That's pretty cool.
You put that there instead of there.
Oh, and you built that building instead of that building? Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go home. Right? And then, all the mobile game type stuff implemented it. It was very clear that it was also designed to be tied into playing on your phone, which also didn't go very well. And so it was just a mosh posh modge podge jumble garbage. It was just bad. And
not only was it like I said, a bad take on player housing, it created an environment where people didn't have to interact at all in an MMO. It took out the multiplayer aspect of it, and it just became a fucking sit in your garrison all day and loot shit.
A lot of people are like, well, that's their try at it, but I feel like they really could make a solid attempt at player housing. Now, we do have quotes from various Blizzard developers over the years being like, it's just impossible. Like in 2010 during Gamescom, Tom Chilton declared that housing will be introduced to World of Warcraft sometime right after never. Granted, these are also the same developers that said, classic WoW. You don't want that.
Oh, that's
Nobody's
true.
going to play that. You think you do, but you don't. In April 2019, however, the developers stated that they are still thinking about how to implement this feature without it feeling too clumsy. So they are still thinking about it. Yeah. And I know in 2022, just last year, I know Ian was interviewed by Hazelnutty Games, and she asked him about player housing. And he pretty much talked about how it's something that many of them do want, but it's a big undertaking. It's not going to be done in just one expansion like Dragonflight. there's only 2 types of garrisons, and back in WoD, if a Blood Elf player wanted like Silver Moon architecture, they wouldn't really get that, and it would cost a raid tier. Right now, I always joke that I would give up some raid tiers for player housing.
I don't think
There's a couple raids.
For the record, I'm not a player housing guy. I'm not a player housing advocate. I really don't care that much for player housing, and I've talked about this before, but I do think we might get it in the next expansion. Now, I've talked about the next expansion quite a lot on my channel, and I've said, the next expansion is going to be an exploration expansion, pirate expansion, right? And I said we're going to get ship riding. That's what I think. I think we're getting ship riding, which is a boat take on dragon riding. You're going to get a ship, customize your boat, and I've mentioned this before, that I think you're going to be able to go down into the the bowels of your ship, and that'll be Blizzard's take on player housing. It'll be a customizable area, customizable in a way in that you can unlock certain cosmetics and maybe move shit around in a certain way, and create a player housing situation down there, where you hang the shit on the wall that you want, put tables in certain places, give it like he mentioned, a Blood Elf aesthetic or a Kultiran aesthetic, whatever you want. But to me, that'll be the best take on player housing, because it's movable. First of all, you can park it at a dock and go in it. People can go to your player house, but it doesn't completely wreck the world. It's just a side thing. It's just a part of your dragon riding ship, and they're going to put all this customization in there anyway, so they might as well, continue it down into the depths of the ship too. But that's the way I see it happening.
I could think of. You know what? I'd give up Shadowlands for player housing. I know I'm going out on a limb right there, but I'd give up Shadowlands for player housing. They'd call me crazy, but
that's not crazy.
I do understand what they're saying, right? Like, if you make player housing in one expansion, then it gets outdated when that expansion gets outdated, essentially, right? Or you're stuck.
Not if it's always on your ship.
I think that's one of the best reasons why player housing could just be an Azeroth. It's also a reason that if they do an Azeroth revamp, it's possible that that's when player housing would be introduced, right? So let's talk about the pros of player housing right now. Okay, so it's a place to hang out with your friends. I think that's one of the things that people love about player housing, right?
Your ship would be too.
It's a thing that encourages social activity in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. It encourages multiplaying, it encourages role-playing, and it encourages just hanging out with friends, which that's pretty much what a lot of life tends to be.
It does. One positive that I just thought of that I hadn't thought of before about player housing is now finally, if you go to the Lion's Pride Inn on Moonguard, you could tell people, go get a fucking room. Go back to your player housing and get that shit done somewhere else. Why are you guys all here doing this shit? So I guess there is a positive. I hadn't thought about it.
And then you also can decorate and show off things, which I mentioned. It'd be great if you could show off your mounts. Maybe you have like a stable area, or
I
like
think
a
that's one of the main
area where
positives
you have like
of player housing is showing off
chilling out, or it just picks a couple of the mounts
shit.
you have, or you could swap them out and have them just chilling in your yard or whatever. That's kind of fun.
Hang a boss head on your wall.
Funnily enough, though, the Garrison does have this. I went back to the Garrisons and I was like, oh yeah, look, they actually
imagine you go into somebody's player house and they have like a door knocker or whatever on the front. You're like, hey, where'd you get that from? Oh, that's the nipple ring of Zoval. I got it after I killed Zoval. It's pretty cool. You hanging up your achievements everywhere. Somebody walks in, they're like, damn, this guy's got his shit going on.
And it is pretty cool. But nobody goes to Garrison, so nobody even knew. So they already have the technology for that as well. And look, they're even taking very good care of my Tazavesh gear glider, feeding it, making sure it's happy. So yeah, you could have gear that you have shown off on the wall, like transmogs you've collected. There's plenty of different ideas you could do with that. Different furniture, different things.
Yeah.
Then you have the benefit of professions. You could have different professions do things
profession table,
in the
maybe.
Player housing, right? Or you can create new professions, right? Like woodworking is the most common one I've heard, where you're making tables and chairs, and you're crafting the furniture for the houses, or the actual houses themselves, I guess, for customization. But I'm sure there's also various ways you could have the current professions also contribute to the housing. Like maybe engineers can make some crazy light fixture you can hang on the wall, or whatever. Listen, we got like Animal Crossing now, all right? All these games, you probably figure out a few things you do with the current professions, right? And I don't think a lot of these would have to even have brand new assets. Like, oh, we got to create all
Look,
these
the
new
gardens and everything. I think you got like what he mentioned about professions. You got to be careful with it a little bit because that's honestly, WoW has never recovered from the profession shit that happened at Garrisons because people were able to just log in for a second and gather shit and hoard money like crazy. The whole Longboy mount was introduced into the game to try to fix what Garrisons did with professions and how they broke the WoW economy. And it also creates a world where people don't have to venture out of their homes. I don't think it's a good idea to really integrate professions into player housing. I think it should just be an aesthetic thing, like that's it.
tables and chairs. Like, sure, you would have to, but there's plenty of old assets. I mean, this game has so many assets in it going back 20 years, right? Like, even though some of the old stuff is pretty old, I guess they wouldn't want to use old stuff at that point.
2-bit shit.
You know, there's a lot of things, especially now when they seem to keep updating more and more. I don't think it would be that big of an issue to find all these assets, but I'm also not a game developer, so that's the other issue, right? It's easy for people like me and for people playing the game to be like, just do this. What's the problem, right? So, I mean, maybe I'm just, you know, acting like it's a little too easy. Maybe they are right. Maybe there's, you know, player housing is this giant undertaking. But I guess my point is that I feel that it is an undertaking worth doing.
I think one big undertaking of player housing is setting aside the place in the world where it would be like, would it be a portal you go through, a separate like instanced realm or something like that? To me, the ship thing solves that issue because you're not really worrying about that. It's just part of the ship. The person takes that shit wherever they go. It doesn't have to be in a special place. You know, where everyone's going to park their ships is going to be a dock, and it could always just be there. It doesn't have to be this separate zone you create or anything like that.
Oh, it's something that players
You don't have to worry about people picking plots of land. It would just make sense that wherever the boat can go, that's where your player house is.
In various games. And I think another reason for the pros is that it promotes playing and exploring the game. You want to play the game to get stuff for your house. You want to do professions to get...
It gives some collectors and what's it called? Completionists something else to do. That's true.
Stuff for your house, right? You want to learn crafting, so you can craft stuff. You want to, you know, craft stuff for the economy. You can make money doing this, right? It's just everything kind of ties together. And then, you know, you're like, oh, that'd be really cool in my house, but I have to go do this old raid to get
it's
it.
It's a good
right?
idea.
Or get this old transmog, or get whatever it might be to put it in my house. And I think that's just cool. It's another reason to play the game when you're in that kind of downward slope, right? When you're down here and there's no big patch for a while, or expansion release for a while, and you're like, hey, you know what? I don't got a lot of stuff to do, but I can like chill in my house and get my house some cool customizable stuff and find some stuff for my house and show off and hang out with people. It's like it just makes sense to me that it would be something you'd want to implement and then improve upon through various expansions. Like, they are correct. It seems like it is a lot, which leads us to our first con, which is the developer cost, right? It's a lot of work and effort to put all this stuff into the game.
The one thing about developer costs that could solve that issue that Blizzard hasn't been able to do yet is the Microsoft merger, right? Microsoft acquiring Blizzard Activision. I mean, you're going to essentially take the current dev power and quadruple it overnight. So they're going to have far more, you know, they're going to have a lot more manpower at their disposal. So maybe that'll finally give them the opportunity to introduce player housing or put some devs on it.
But I feel like once you establish that, you can kind of grow it from there, right? Like, you can keep adding more furniture and more stuff throughout patches and expansions and just build upon it. And the main thing for me is keeping it in the old world, right? If it's like in Orgrimmar, Stormwind, like, those aren't going anywhere, right? If you just keep those in those places, that's fine. Now, I guess that's when it starts getting a little like, well, what if you want to have it over here? Well, you could do that in future expansions, right? Like, maybe in the future expansion after the one you've implemented.
Or you could put it on your boat and you fucking take it everywhere.
Where you're like Orgrimmar, Stormwind, and the next expansion, you're like, hey, you know what? You can go to Thunderbluff now. You can go to all the major cities now. And then maybe the expansion after that, they're like, okay, now we made it so you can go to different zones, right? You can just pick up your house and move it. Again,
player mud hut.
This might be extremely difficult, and I don't know about the developer implications or workload or whatever it might be, right? But it just, to me, it makes sense. But I don't know. The only other thing I saw was storage as a thing for player housing, like as a pro, like storage, but storage, I don't really care. Maybe storing your furniture would be all right, but
I don't. Yeah.
you got banks. You don't really need more storage.
Yeah.
You got banks. You got inventory
What are you
slots.
guys
You got
storing?
transmog storage. Like, I don't think you need more storage.
Yeah, like there's so many things that used to be held in bags, like transmog and shit, that isn't anymore. I mean, what are you guys storing? What the fuck are all these people hoarding away in World of Warcraft? I don't understand.
I think that's something they don't have to worry about.
I don't even use my
with
bank.
player
I
housing.
just got things in my
I
bags.
don't know. Some other cons that I saw just from reading around was the lore implications from it. I read somebody be like, the lore implications, you're supposed to be this big hero and you got a house.
Currency, yeah.
And I was like, okay. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Heroes don't have houses.
Blizzard retcons their own lore all the time anyway. Like, I don't know. Who cares about the lore implications? And they said storage makes banks less meaningful. Again, like, that's fine. I don't need storage in player housing. And then the other big one I saw as a con to player housing was creating more things to manage, which I guess could be a con, because that is another element of stuff to learn in the game and to manage and to go to and all this stuff. But I would argue that I wouldn't really want player housing to be something that I have to kind of manage and work out daily. You know, like at Garrisons, right? At Garrisons, you had to like go do your mining and your herbalism and your
like that.
quests here and there.
I don't want more fucking homework assignments. That was the worst part about Shadowlands. You always felt like you fucking had an assignment to do. It was so damn annoying. Fucking Torghast and shit. I don't know, man. I don't want anything to do with that. One good thing about Dragonflight is, even with Renown Track and all that stuff, there's never been... I don't feel like there's anything that you've had to do when you log in. You can do stuff. You can pick and choose. You can gear out. You can go chase mounts. You can do whatever you want. But the whole log in and there's a list of shit that you have to get done to keep up, that was Shadowlands, and I don't want anything to do with that.
And get your resources. Like, I don't want that. I just want a house that I can customize and make it look cool, and then be like, hey, everybody, come look at my house.
Like,
and then
I know
keep
Tundra was
decorating.
joking just now when he said the WoW token. That just, brought up something in my head. That's the only reason I might see Blizzard actually investing time into this, is so they can put items for the player house on the WoW store, on the Blizzard store, for money. Right, so you spend real world money, you get this shit, you get that shit, customize your... I could imagine that. That might be their true motivation behind actually implementing this, is just creating more stuff for the Blizzard store so people can buy it. Damn it. They might actually do this now. Bobby needs an extra boat.
Stuff. That's it. I don't need all these little mini games and like things attached to it. It's just that's all I would want personally. Other people may disagree. If you do, comment down below and let me know. But that's really all I would want from player housing, is just a cool place to hang out with people.
What's up, Cam?
People decorate, show off collectibles and stuff, customize. Almost like you're playing Animal Crossing. And again, I think that people just want like World of Warcraft, Animal Crossing style housing. So that's really all I got about player housing. Again, let me know in the comments section what you think about player housing. Are you for it, against it? How would you do it? Do you agree, disagree, all that stuff? But I did just want to have a little discussion about it, because I was just thinking about it the other day and I was like, man, I really would like player housing. So let me know.
We'll see.
Also, if you want to check out the latest Pointless Top 10, there's a whole playlist of the last Pointless Top 10s. We just had Dark Moon Fair, we had Rats.
It's been good.
Whole bunch of stuff. You go check it out,
stuff.
all in the playlist right there. Or you can check out this other video of me ranting about World of Warcraft stuff.
There you go.
Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
WoW Krendor's great, man.
Okay. So ya.
Yeah, he's great. I love his stuff. Like I said, not a big player housing fan, but I can see it happening with the ships, man. And as far as dev power goes, well, Microsoft's coming along. They're going to solve that issue. It could be a big boon for the Blizzard store. That might be the real reason they do it.